Triple murderer Lothar Luft escaped from Ziegenheim Schwalmstadt Prison in a panzer. Late this morning, Ziegenheim Prison was breached when a panzer smashed through 3 sets of prison gates. The tank had apparently been stolen from the Herrenwald Army base earlier this morning.
Welcome to Greatest Prison Escapes. I'm your host, Billy Hayes. I know a little about escaping from prison. On October 2nd, 1975, I escaped from a Turkish prison 5 years into a life sentence. The story of my escape was the subject of my book and the Oscar-winning film, Midnight Express. Whatever got us there, everyone in prison is thinking of one thing: getting out. This series is about those who make the ultimate decision, seeking freedom at any cost. On this episode of Greatest Prison Escapes, we look at the mentor-protege relationship between Lothar Luft and Hans-Joachim Horn. And while the German prison system may have driven them apart, it was a tank that would bring them back together in one of the most spectacular prison escapes we've ever seen. Hans-Joachim Horn was serving a 5-year sentence at Butzbach Prison in South Hesse, Germany, for a series of misdemeanors.
What are you doing, man? It's my lunch. Want to go get your own?
While Butzbach was one of the toughest prisons in the world, Hans was certainly not one of the toughest prisoners. He had just entered into a world that was ready to eat him alive.
I just want to be left alone.
What do you want, Lothar?
For you to stop. Either leave him alone, or you can deal with me.
Lothar, is it?
Yeah?
I'm Hans. Thank you for helping me.
You've got a lot to learn, kid.
It is not uncommon for an older, more dangerous inmate to take a younger inmate under their wing. Part of the dynamic that happens is that it can really become almost like a father-son relationship.
Lothar Luft was serving a life sentence for a triple murder he committed just over a year prior. When Lothar told the inmates to leave Hans alone, they listened.
A triple murderer like Lothar would be very adept at adapting to prison. The rules of the prison environment and streets are basically the same.
Hans was in desperate need of a mentor, and he found one in the most unlikely of places, a prison. Lothar, who excelled at working in the kitchen, got Hans a job with him. He taught Hans that working smart was just as valuable as working hard. And to do so, one had to stick to a plan and take a measured approach. Being both good and efficient at your job was the best way to stay off the radar of both prison personnel and other inmates.
For the older inmate, having the younger one is more of a relationship that's instrumental, meaning the younger person is actually a tool for the older one. For the younger inmate, though, having an older one is also beneficial because they may offer protection. They may know the system very well.
Then the unthinkable happened. The German prison authorities were wary of how much influence Lothar Luft had in Butzbach. So he was transferred to another maximum security prison, Schwalmstadt Prison in Ziegenheim. Hans was both crushed and scared. He was losing both his mentor and protector.
Dear Lothar, life here at Butzbach isn't the same without you, but I'm managing. I've kept my head down and focused on continuing to do good work in the kitchen.
Dear Hans, I am happy to hear you're managing to stay out of trouble. I wish I were back at Butzbach. Life isn't the same here at Schwalmstadt.
Lothar and Hans wrote each other constantly. At first, the letters were that of a father and son missing one another. But soon, they would become much more than that.
Dear Lothar, I'm up for parole. The warden informed me only a few hours ago.
Lothar began coaching Hans on his parole hearing, telling him what authority figures like to hear, telling him how to appear conciliatory. The warden tried to trap Hans, expressing wariness over releasing inmates early on such a short sentence. She asked him what lesson he had learned in such a short time. Hans responded as Lothar had instructed him, talked about the values of good, honest work, and related it back to his experience in the kitchen. He also played to the warden's ego, speaking to the wisdom of deferring to authority figures, whom were clearly in that position for a reason. Lothar's advice and Hans's adherence to it paid off. Hans was released on parole and left prison with a clean slate. But a question remained. Would he quit while he was ahead and stick to the straight and narrow? Or would he remain loyal to Lothar, his beloved mentor? Within a week of being released from Butzbach, Hans-Joachim Horn would prove his loyalty to Lothar, the man he considered to be his father. He traveled to Ziegenheim to visit Lothar in Schwalmstadt Prison.
Lothar.
Hello, Hans. It is good to see you.
It's good to see you too. Why did they have you chained up? Did you do anything?
Of course not. Things here are just different.
What can I do?
Other than breaking me out of here, nothing.
Would that be possible?
I'm up for parole in a few weeks anyway. I might get lucky with the parole board. I could have a shot.
If I got parole, you will get it too.
Lothar, due to his heinous crimes, and unsurprisingly to everyone but Hans, failed to make parole. Hans was devastated. For Hans, there was only one answer: corruption.
Things are getting very bad for me. I'm afraid that if I don't get out of here, you're going to come back and find out I'm dead.
Hans spent a couple of weeks in Ziegenheim visiting Lothar as often as the prison would let him. They kicked around several plans, but nothing seemed foolproof enough for Lothar. Hans returned home from Ziegenheim at the behest of his mentor. He didn't want the prison guards to get suspicious, but they continued communicating by mail. After Hans returned home to Stad Tallendorf, he observed something peculiar about the nearby Herrenwald Kaserne, or Herrenwald Barracks. The security of the base was comically low, low enough that he convinced himself he could steal a tank.
I think that the security post-reunification in Germany was lax. I think the German people were reacting to the end of 90 years of being on a war footing, and I think that they just were not as strict as they were during the Cold War era.
When Hans wrote to Lothar that he was convinced he could steal a Panzer and drive it to Schwalmstadt Prison, Lothar didn't think there was anything more foolproof than escaping in a tank. Lothar drew Hans a map of how to get to the courtyard. There were 3 metal gates he had to make it through, all of which would feel like a speed bump to the tank. Hans waited outside the Herrenwald barracks until 11 p.m., when security got even more lax.
Being able to steal armored personnel carrier like that so easily is just a catastrophic failure of physical security. To have only one layer of security, which is just a chain link fence, is just ridiculous. Schwalmstadt Prison was only a couple of hours' drive away.
spent the night familiarizing himself with the operation of the tank with the engine off. Once he was confident with the controls, he took a nap.
I think it was a brilliant mistake that Hans stole the Fuchs, which was a wheeled vehicle versus a tracked vehicle. It's an agile vehicle, has an automatic transmission that has a steering wheel, so somebody that is not familiar with armored personnel carriers would be able to drive it. It also has good vision to the front and to the left and to the right. It has rear view mirrors, so if he was to back up, he could see where he's going. So it would be a very familiar cockpit driving compartment for somebody that has never been inside an armored personnel carrier.
The tank's security had one glaring weakness, that Hans was able to start it with his own car key. For Hans, the only thing easier than sneaking onto the base was driving the tank off it, right through the fence.
Then to get the vehicle and get it out the front gate is kind of blows my mind.
Hans was so famished from spending the entire night in the tank that he actually stopped for pizza on the way to Schwalmstadt.
In Germany, during the Cold War, you know, the West Germans, and this happened in the old West Germany, seeing a military vehicle is nothing out of the ordinary.
Excuse me, boss. Do you have the time?
Somewhere to be?
Prisoners were totally clueless, carrying on as usual.
Lothar! Hans, get in!
The few guards that were armed took some pot shots at the tank. They might as well have been throwing rocks at it.
I can't believe you came.
I would never let you stay in there, mate.
I feel invincible in here. They can't do a damn thing to us.
They could shoot at that thing all day long, and there was nothing they could do until an Army unit got there or an Air Force unit got there. There was nothing they could do to stop it.
They pull us to run before the police swarm us. He's stuck.
Hans and Lothar made a plan to ditch the tank once they were in the Hornberg forest. But that wasn't the only thing Lothar would be ditching.
Lothar, what should we do next?
Let me think.
I have an aunt with a large family in Munich. Perhaps we could stay with her for a while.
Munich? Now, Hans, one of the most populated cities in the country is not the place you go to hide out.
Lothar may have liked Hans. Hans listened to him, and he was a quick learner. But when you're on the lam, you don't have time to hold someone's hand and show them the ropes. And while Hans had done a great job in stealing the tank that would allow Lothar to escape, Hans had failed to plan where they could go next to lay low. So Lothar made a callous decision.
Lothar! Lothar! Where are you?
Hans was crushed. He waited for Lothar to return to the tank, but after an hour, he fled, knowing the authorities would soon be on him. Hans wasn't cut out for the life of a fugitive. By morning, he had made his way to Frankfurt.
Thank you.
Not knowing what to do, and once again famished, Hans again stopped for food. This time, he wasn't so lucky.
A lightweight criminal like Hans would not fare very well as a fugitive. In order to be a successful fugitive, you really need to have that criminal thinking component to you.
He was quickly identified by civilians. German police arrested him while he was enjoying some breakfast outside at a street-side cafe. Bringing Lothar in would be a much tougher task. He all but vanished. German and European authorities had no leads after 3 months. They began to wonder if Lothar would be gone for good. Lothar's trail had gone completely cold until a woman spotted him in a wooded area. He was hiding in Comar, France, a small village 170 miles west of Paris. She called the police based on a mugshot she saw of Lothar. Hans had 3 months to wonder what happened to Lothar. Turns out he would have a chance to ask him himself.
May I sit down?
Oh, sure.
Lothar?
It is good to see you, Hans.
What happened to you that night?
I got lost.
Hans was elated to see Lothar again. His mentor was back. Lothar spun a story about how unfortunate it was they got separated. To Lothar's surprise, Hans bought the whole story.
The reason a protege may forgive a mentor so easily after such a betrayal is they are still under their influence. Just because the betrayal has happened doesn't mean that all the emotions of that relationship disappears.
Hans! Hi, Lothar. I was thinking, since you taught me how to work in the kitchen back in Butzbach, maybe I can teach you how to operate a forklift. Good work is valued here the same as it is in Butzbach.
Is this smock buzzer in you?
Oh, no, Lothar is my friend. He's who
I know who he is.
Why did you want to see me? I have a plan.
Not here. Later, while we're eating.
What Hans proposed was simple. He would use the forklift so he could make it over the perimeter wall. The escape was over before it started. Hans was tackled by the guards almost as soon as he began. Little did Hans know, it was for the best that the plan was foiled. The wall he was scaling, it wasn't even the perimeter wall. It was just a secondary wall. Had he made it over, the guards on the other side of the wall could have shot him. Shortly after the second escape attempt, German authorities separated Hans and Lothar, sending Hans back to Butzbach Prison. Lothar was stuck in the highest security wing of Schwalmstadt. Not long after he was released back in the general population, Lothar died in prison. Years later, Hans was released. His current whereabouts are unknown. In the aftermath of the escape, anti-tank obstacles were put up around Schwalmstadt Prison. There have been no successful escapes from there since. I'm Billy Hayes. Thank you for joining us on another explosive episode of Greatest Prison Escapes.